Hi everyone, as you can see from the title of today's video, I'm going to talk about cost of living in Australia. If you're planning to move to Australia and currently organizing your budget, or if you're just interested on how much does it cost to live in Australia, please continue watching. I have been living in Australia for 6.5 years. I originally came from Eastern Europe, Ukraine, and during this time I have been living in 3 different cities across 2 different states in Australia. I used to live in Sydney for almost 4 years. I lived in regional New South Wales for a year, and now I live in Perth, Western Australia for almost 2 years. So I can a bit more objectively compare the cost of living in different cities in Australia. Disclaimer before I start, it is really hard to provide some average numbers on how much money do you need to live in Australia, as we all have different family sizes, different stages in life, different priorities. I will be referring to my own experience of a family of 2 adults living in Australia and also to some reliable sources I found on the internet. So hopefully it will give you some clear picture. First, I will start with the accommodation or the cost of housing in Australia, as this will be the most expensive area of your budget, and also housing is what will have a major difference in prices across different cities in Australia. The rest of household expenses such as food, utilities, childcare will be relatively the same across different cities. The latest data I found in Australian Bureau of Statistics is dated 2017-2018, but it's still worth looking at it. Average weekly housing cost were $480 for owners with a mortgage, that's almost $2,000 per month, and $366 for renters, which is almost $1,500 per month. Of course, these are pre-COVID numbers, and that's a lot been happening when COVID started, and there have been a lot of changes since 2018. So I found the ANZ Housing Affordability Report for June quarter 2029. ANZ is one of the major banks in Australia, so its report considered to be reliable. So in 2021, you would spend almost 30% of your household income to pay your rent for a house and 25% of your income for a unit. And in terms of a mortgage, you would have to spend more than 40% of your income for the house and more than 30% for the unit. These are quite high numbers, and I assume this is how COVID affected the economy. These are the average numbers across the whole country, and to be more specific, this report shows numbers for the particular city in Australia. So as you can see, Sydney is the most expensive for both renting and mortgages. 49%, it's huge, but that is correlated with house prices in Sydney at the moment, and they are really high. Compared with Perth, for example, where 29% for a mortgage and 28% of the income for renting. This was actually the main reason why we decided to move from New South Wales, from Sydney to Perth. We moved pre-COVID in 2020, but even pre-COVID, we looked and we realized that it is more affordable to buy a house in Perth compared to Sydney. So to compare this statistic to the reality, let's take my situation. We currently pay 1,500 Australian dollars per month in mortgage repayments for 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, 30 minutes from the city. And I would say it's about the same as we paid for the rent before we bought the house. Our priority was not to take too much debt and to buy maybe a bit older house, but to keep our repayments manageable. So all these statistics is good, but how can you calculate how much do you need to spend on housing? The best and the most accurate tool would be just to go to the domain.com or realestate.com and search for the properties, for the accommodation that is currently on the market. Filter based on your preferences, how many rooms you need, which area, which location, and you will be able to see how much money would you need. Let's have a look, for example, what we can find here. So this is a domain.com app. I select Sydney. I select how many beds, for example 2. This is actually, let's make it rent. Price per week. Let's decide we want price no more than 400. Property type, we want the apartment. 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom. Parking, and search. Here you can see how many properties we have available in the city. So with this price range, there are not many options available in the city, but there are plenty of options in the suburbs. So you can decide on what you want based on the location, price, other features. So this will give you the realistic picture on how much money would you need to spend on housing. Also keep in mind that most of the time you would rent the apartment without any furniture except for kitchen, cabinets, stove, and that's it. You would also need to budget some cost of furniture as well. So to summarize this point, the housing is pretty expensive in Australia, like everywhere in the world I would say, but there are plenty of options. And if you want to save, you can find cheaper options. If your priority is location, you can also find the location you like. Just use those websites I mentioned, domain.com.au or realestate.com.au, they're pretty the same. And good luck with your search. Number 2, grocery. Grocery is probably the second biggest area of expenses, at least in my family. But in terms of Australia, the prices for groceries will be pretty much the same across the country, with some slight differences. Let's first look at some statistics and some averages. I tried to find some reliable statistic, but there are really different numbers over there on the internet, and it's really hard to find something relevant to 2021. One source says the average grocery spending for the typical Australian household is $153 per week, which is just about $600 per month. Other source said it's $260 per week, which is just around $1,000 per month. So it's really hard to say the average. So the best way to plan on how much money your household would need for the grocery in Australia is again to go to the supermarket website, make a typical weekly basket, grocery basket, and see how much would it cost. We have two major supermarkets, Coles and Woolworths. They are basically the same, and you can use their websites to model how much money would you need. There are also smaller groceries, smaller chains, but their websites are quite convenient and easy to use, so it would be easy for you to navigate. In terms of my household, a family of 2 adults, we spent around $250 per week for groceries, which is $1,000 per month. Our grocery bill wasn't always like that. During first few years in Australia, probably it was twice less as I was studying, and saving was a priority for us. At the moment we have different priorities and our grocery bill is a bit higher. Again, as with everything, if the priority is to save, there are plenty of options. You can buy in bulk, you can do freezing, you can do meal prep. That will definitely help to reduce the grocery bill. But going on the main grocery websites will help you to see the realistic, up-to-date prices and see how much money your family will need. Next is utilities: electricity, gas, water. This is the area that I was surprised the most, as it's also a big part of your living expenses. Particularly electricity makes most of it. There is no central heating in Australia, and most of the people will use air conditioner for cooling and heating, so that can make electricity bill ridiculously high. Coming from Eastern Europe, where we have central heating and it's always warm inside, I was a bit surprised on how cold it can be in Australian homes. I'm not used to wearing warm clothes at home, but here you have to adjust in order to save electricity, otherwise your bill can be unreasonably high. So in average, depending on your house size and how family members you have, your monthly bill will be around $200 for the utilities. But I'd say it's a minimum. If you have kids and you want to have a really warm temperature in house, you would have to use more electricity, so your bill will be higher. But there are also many ways people can save on electricity. People will use electric blankets, electric sheet, gas heaters. Also, depending on the state, solar installation is quite popular because of the government rebates. For example, we installed solar panels almost 2 years ago when we bought our house, and currently we practically don't pay anything for the electricity. But it was a big upfront investment with a long-term goal to save spending on electricity. Number 4, transportation. If you live in a city, you probably won't need a car, as you would use public transport, and their average cost of public transport in Australia is around $4 or $5 per day, depending on the city and how far you have to travel. If you live in a suburban area, you will need a car because the public transport is good in Australia, but it's not that frequent. It's not that developed, I would say, again, compared to my own country. So I would say if you have a family and you live at least 20-30 minutes from the city, you would need a car. To check the prices for cars, you would usually go to carsales.com.au, or you can go to marketplaces like Facebook Marketplace or Gumtree. You'll be able to check the real life prices for the cars. But apart from the car price, there's also cost associated with the car ownership, like insurance, service and fuel. And it will also vary depending on the vehicle you have and how far you have to travel. In average, the cost of the insurance will be around $700 to $1,500 per year. And the average service cost will really depend on the vehicle you have and how far you travel. But I would say it would be also around $1,200 per year. The average fuel spending for the typical Australian would be around $100 per month. So owning a car is also requires some extra expenses. But again, if you live in a city, close to the city, you probably won't need a car, as you'll have more public transport options available. Number 5, restaurants, takeaways, cafes. It will be a quick one, but I also think it's important to note, as same as the groceries, it will be also quite a big component of your budget. Takeaway coffee, where I waste most of my money, would be $5. Breakfast or brunch for 2 will be minimum $50, and dinner for 2 will vary from $80 to $120, depends on the restaurant. So as you can see, dinner in a fancy restaurant can cost you your grocery bill, but that's how it is. Next one is internet, and yes, I separated this from the utilities. I was really surprised by the prices and the speed of the internet compared to Ukraine. And then I found this information that Australia's internet ranks the 53rd in the world in terms of speed. But not only it's slow, but it's also expensive. In Ukraine, you would spend less than $10 for really good internet. And here in Australia, you have to pay at least $70 per month for the average quality internet. So for me, this area is a bit strange and I had to adjust to it. But again, it's getting better with each year and mobile internet is becoming quite good. But yeah, internet will also be a significant part of your budget. I think that's all for today, and I haven't included other costs such cost of clothing, childcare, entertainment, but the video is quite long already. And particularly for those who watched until here, I want to give you a pretty good website that will help you to identify the cost of living expenses in Australia. I did this for myself and it gives pretty accurate numbers. So you can also have a look, take into consideration what I said above and compare with these numbers. So the website called Home Loan Experts, and I think it's quite reliable tool because they would use this information when people take out the mortgage for their houses. Let's for example take 1 adult, 0 children, state we want to live New South Wales, living arrangement renting, and your lifestyle, student, basic, moderate, lavish. I would say when you come to Australia initially you would choose basics or moderate, but let's choose basic and let's see the result. And so here it shows that weekly you would need $500 of living expenses, including your housing of $260. Again, this is quite an average number. It can give you an idea because both rent and living expenses, you can adjust it according to your own situation, but roughly you can use these numbers as a guide. Of course, all these numbers and expenses sounds like a lot, but remember you have to look at these numbers and compare it with the income the family receives, and it will be very different for each family. So don't be discouraged. Check the other website for job seekers, seek.com.au, to see what is the average salary in Australia, and then you'll be able to compare these expenses with salary you will be able to get. The fun fact, according to OECD in 2019, Australia had the highest wages in the world. Of course, this is pre-tax number, but still. So when you look at this from this point of view, maybe everything I said before won't be that scary. So if you look on the official website, the minimum wages in Australia in 2021 is $20.33 per hour before tax. I hope this video was useful and it gives you some idea on how much money do you need to live in Australia, how much money do you need to come here and plan your first few months. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments, and good luck!